When it comes to the silent war between the sexes, you are not losing battles of love, but of metaphysics. You feel it in the quiet erosion of your purpose, in the cold peace that follows a disagreement you didn't know you were having. This isn't about loud arguments or clear demands. It's about a subtle, psychological pressure that bends your will until you no longer recognize the shape of your own soul. You built your castle, but you've surrendered the keys, wondering how the walls inside feel so unfamiliar. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this not as personal failure, but as a profound philosophical inversion. He declared, "When you go to woman, do not forget the whip." The modern world recoils, branding him a misogynist. But what if we've misunderstood this warning for a century? What if the whip is not an instrument of cruelty, but a symbol of an unyielding will, the very essence of a man's sovereign self? The real violence begins when that will is systematically disarmed through a language of moral and emotional critique. She does not shout you down. She redefines the very ground you stand on until your strength is recast as toxicity, your resolve as oppression. You are not hated for your weakness, but for your potential strength. So, what is this invisible mechanism, this psychological jujitsu that uses a man's own nature against him? It is a power that does not confront, but envelops, turning your virtues into perceived vices until you police yourself on her behalf. How did this happen? The answer lies not in her nature, but in a catastrophic philosophical shift that inverted the very values of our civilization. You have been conditioned for this surrender. The hidden problem is not her, but a civilization that has systematically pathologized masculine depth. Carl Jung warned of the anima, the inner feminine, which, when unrecognized, projects outward as a seductive and tyrannical force. You seek her approval as a substitute for your own self-validation, a hollow crown bestowed by a hand that can just as easily take it away. This is the psychological root. Your innate drive for meaning has been outsourced, making you a slave to a reflection you can never truly possess. Friedrich Nietzsche called this the slave revolt in morality. The ancient, masterful virtues, strength, command, a relentless pursuit of one's own greatness, were cunningly redefined as sins. What was once honorable became arrogant. What was once decisive became cruel. This philosophical sleight of hand did not happen by accident. It was a slow, cultural poisoning of the well from which men drink their sense of purpose. You are not struggling against a person, but against a centuries-old moral inversion that has left you disoriented, fighting a ghost with a language you are forbidden to speak. You try to be good according to this new sanitized code. You become more empathetic, more accommodating, you dull your own edges. And what is your reward? Not respect, but a quiet, simmering contempt, because you have abandoned the very foundation that makes a man capable of genuine love, his unwavering commitment to his own creative fire. This is the great trap. But what is the true cost of this spiritual disarmament? The consequences are not merely personal loneliness. They are a societal decay that is playing out in real time, in the quiet collapse of every institution men once built. The unseen consequence is a world becoming softer, quieter, and far less potent. This is not a metaphor. It is a neurological and cultural reality. Your drive, the very engine of ambition and discovery, is being systematically muted. Every time you swallow a justified anger, reframe a healthy boundary as a fault, or apologize for your own competence, you are not being virtuous. You are participating in a great pacification. Cognitive biases like the empathy gap ensure you alone bear the burden of understanding, while your own needs are labeled as defects. You are conditioning your own brain for servitude. Society celebrates this castration as enlightenment. But look around at the hollowed-out institutions, the stifling risk aversion, the endless committees that produce nothing but more meetings. This is the world built by men who have lost their thumos, their spirited, assertive core. Viktor Frankl identified that the primary human drive is not pleasure, but meaning. You have been tricked into chasing a pleasurable harmony, a conflict-free existence that sterilizes your life of all significant purpose. The consequence is a quiet despair that masquerades as comfort, a gilded cage where the walls are made of your own unused potential. This is the grand silent trade. You gave up your fire for a blanket of security, but the security is an illusion. For when the inevitable storms of life arrive, the true crises that demand an unyielding will, you will find your reflexes dull, your spirit domesticated. The whip Nietzsche spoke of was never for her. It was the discipline you must wield upon your own soul to keep it sharp, focused, and free. But how do you reclaim it? How do you rebel against a system that has convinced you that your chains are, in fact, jewelry? The path to breaking free is not found in blaming her, but in a radical and counterintuitive war against the enemy within. The rebellion begins not with a roar against her, but with a silent tectonic shift inside you. It demands you cease seeking permission for your own existence. This is the counterintuitive core. To win the external game, you must abandon it entirely. Your focus must turn inward to forging a value so unshakable that her approval or disapproval becomes as relevant as the weather. This is what Nietzsche meant by becoming the Bermensch, the overman who creates his own values beyond the good and evil of the herd. It is a declaration of psychological sovereignty. Stop negotiating for your soul. The first act of rebellion is to reclaim your internal narrative. When a comment is designed to provoke guilt or shame, you do not engage on its terms. You observe it with the detached curiosity of a scientist studying a strange phenomenon. You recognize the tactic not as a personal attack, but as a reflex of a system you are now transcending. Your silence becomes a fortress. Your focused action, a statement of purpose. You build a life so compelling that her psychological influence simply loses its gravitational pull. This is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming so complete in your own purpose that you relate from a position of choice, not need. You engage not because you require her validation, but because you choose to share the abundance of your own spirit. This is the ultimate power shift. It renders psychological violence impotent, for it targets a need you no longer possess. But this raises the final, most terrifying question. What is the ultimate truth that makes this rebellious self-ownership not just a strategy, but a moral imperative? The answer redefines the very nature of reality itself. The ultimate truth is this: her psychological violence is not a personal weapon, but a cosmic biological reflex to a vacuum of meaning. You are not made to be comfortable. You were made to conquer chaos. When you abdicate this sacred duty, the universe, in its indifferent wisdom, allows a lesser force to fill the void. She becomes the unwitting instrument of your own spiritual neglect, holding up a mirror to the God you failed to become. This is the final, shocking inversion. The problem was never her nature, but your abandonment of your own. This is the paradigm shift that redefines reality. Your entire life has been a silent plea for a peace you were never meant to have. The struggle, the tension, the glorious friction of overcoming, this is the purpose. To seek to eliminate, it is to seek death. The whip is the eternal symbol of this difficult truth, the relentless self-discipline required to impose your order upon the chaos of existence. It is the tool you use to carve a legacy from the stone of time, a testament so potent that it either attracts a complementary force or stands magnificently alone. Let this truth haunt you. Let it shatter the comfortable lies you've curated. The choice is no longer about understanding her, but about answering the primordial call within. Will you continue to kneel at the altar of a borrowed morality, praying for a salvation that will never come? Or will you rise, whip in hand, not against her, but against the weakness in your own soul? And finally, after a lifetime of sleep, become the man you were forged to be? The world does not need your niceness. It demands your greatness. The rest is silence.